The mist rolled across the cemetery stones like a specter's breath as Penelope Fletcher knelt before a fresh grave, her fingers tracing the name etched in cold marble. It was May 1878, and for the third consecutive dawn, she had walked the mile from her small home on the outskirts of Cottonwood Springs, Arizona Territory, to this lonely plot of earth that now held her brother's remains. "Reckon it ain't proper for a lady to be out here all alone," came a deep voice from behind her. Penelope didn't turn. She'd noticed the tall shadow watching from beneath the old oak tree yesterday and the day before, the cowboy who kept his distance yet somehow made his presence known. "And I reckon it's not proper for a man to follow a lady without introducing himself," she replied, her voice steady despite the grief that threatened to choke her. She heard the soft crunch of boots on the gravel path. "Name's Adam Sutton, madam. I meant no disrespect." Penelope finally turned to face him. He stood about 6 feet tall, his frame lean but strong beneath a dust-covered denim jacket. His hat was pulled low, but she could see clear blue eyes studying her with unexpected gentleness. "I've been keeping watch." "These parts ain't always safe for a woman alone," he explained, shifting uncomfortably under her scrutiny. "My grief is my own business, Mr. Sutton." Penelope rose to her feet, smoothing her black mourning dress. "As is how I choose to express it." Adam nodded slowly. "Your brother was a good man." "Finest deputy this territory ever saw." Penelope's breath caught. "You knew Thomas, rode with him on several passes, never met a man more determined to uphold the law." Adam removed his hat, revealing sandy brown hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "When I heard what happened with the Stillwell gang, I came back to pay my respects." The mention of the outlaws who had gunned down her brother made Penelope's hands ball into fists. "Then you understand why I must come here each morning. I promised him I would never forget." "Some promises weigh heavy," Adam said quietly. "Mind if I walk with you back to town? Been noticing tracks of riders near the cemetery. Probably nothing, but I can manage," Penelope interrupted, though the idea of unknown riders left her uneasy. Her brother's final case had involved dangerous men who might still harbor grudges. Adam replaced his hat. "Then I'll bid you good day, Miss Fletcher." As he turned to leave, Penelope surprised herself. "Tomorrow," she called after him. "If you insist on watching over me like some guardian angel, Mr. Sutton, you might as well walk properly beside me tomorrow." He tipped his hat. "Dawn it is, Miss Fletcher." True to his word, Adam was waiting at the cemetery gates the following morning. For a week, they established a silent routine. He would meet her at first light, walk beside her to Thomas's grave, and stand a respectful distance away while she said her private prayers. Sometimes she would tell stories about her brother, and occasionally Adam would add his own memories of riding with Deputy Fletcher. On the 8th day, rain poured from an angry sky. Penelope arrived at the cemetery drenched, her black umbrella doing little against the sideways deluge. She was surprised to find Adam already there, water streaming from his slicker. "You shouldn't have come in this weather," he said, concern evident in his voice. "Neither should you," she countered, but accepted when he offered to hold the umbrella over both of them. They stood side by side at Thomas's grave, the rain creating small rivers between the headstones. "Your devotion to your brother is admirable," Adam said softly, "but he wouldn't want you catching your death out here." Penelope stared at the muddy ground. "It's all I have left to give him." "You have your life, Miss Fletcher, the one he protected by taking that bullet." Her head snapped up. "How do you know about that?" Adam looked away. "Thomas spoke of it once, said the Stillwell gang came after him because he was getting too close to their operation. Said they threatened his sister, and that's why he confronted them alone." Penelope's legs weakened. She had suspected, but hearing it confirmed that Thomas had died protecting her was almost too much to bear. She swayed slightly, and Adam's strong hand steadied her elbow. "Perhaps we should get you home," he suggested. For the first time, Penelope allowed him to escort her all the way to her small white cottage at the edge of town. As they reached her porch, the rain finally slackening, she turned to him. "Would you care for some coffee, Mr. Sutton? It seems the least I can offer after you've gotten soaked accompanying me." Inside, Penelope removed her wet shawl and stoked the kitchen stove while Adam stood awkwardly by the door, dripping on her rag rug. "You can hang your coat there," she indicated a peg near the stone fireplace. As he removed his slicker, Penelope noticed a distinctive silver star pinned to his vest. "You're a lawman," Adam nodded. "U.S. Marshal, have been for about 3 years now. And you're just mentioning this now." Irritation crept into her voice. "Why are you really in Cottonwood Springs, Marshal Sutton?" Adam sighed, accepting the steaming cup she offered. "I was sent to finish what your brother started. The Stillwell gang has been running guns to renegade Apache bands, stirring up trouble all through the territory. And watching over me." "Is that official marshal business too?" "No, madam, that's personal." His eyes met hers. "Thomas saved my life once. Least I could do was look after his sister when I heard what happened." Penelope sank into a chair. "So you're hunting the men who killed him?" "I am. Got 2 of them already. The rest are hiding out in the mountains north of here." Adam paused. "Which is why your dawn visits to the cemetery worry me. Their friends might still be watching." "I'm not afraid," Penelope declared, though her hands trembled slightly around her cup. "Maybe you should be." Adam's voice was gentle but firm. "These are dangerous men, Miss Fletcher." "Penelope," she corrected. "If you're going to walk with me every morning and tell me I should fear for my life, you might as well use my given name." A small smile touched his lips. "Penelope, then." From that day forward, their cemetery visits took on a new dimension. Adam would tell her about his progress tracking the remaining outlaws, and Penelope would share more about her life with Thomas after their parents had died of fever 5 years earlier. She had become the town's schoolteacher, while Thomas had pinned on a badge and sworn to uphold the law. One morning in early June, Adam was not at their usual meeting place. Penelope waited for nearly an hour before continuing her ritual alone, a sense of unease growing within her. She had grown accustomed to his steady presence, the quiet strength he exuded without saying a word. When she returned home that afternoon, she found a note pushed under her door, "Gone north to follow a lead. Back in a few days. Lock your doors. A.S." For 3 days, Penelope continued her dawn visits alone, feeling strangely bereft without Adam's tall figure beside her. On the 4th morning, as she knelt by Thomas's grave arranging fresh wildflowers, the sound of approaching horses made her look up. 3 riders appeared at the cemetery entrance, their faces shadowed beneath wide-brimmed hats. None was Adam. Penelope rose slowly, instinct telling her these were not men paying respects to lost loved ones. "Well, look what we found, boys," the lead rider called out, his voice carrying across the silent graveyard. "Deputy Fletcher's pretty sister, all alone at last." Penelope took a step back, her heart pounding. These must be the remaining Stillwell gang members Adam had been hunting. "I have no quarrel with you," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. The man laughed. "Your brother had quarrel enough for both of you." He dismounted, hand resting on his holstered pistol. "And now that meddling marshal's finally out of the way, we can finish our business." Cold fear gripped Penelope's heart. "Out of the way? What had happened to Adam?" "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, desperately searching for an escape route. The man advanced toward her. "Your brother took something that belongs to us before he died. We want it back." "Thomas took nothing but evidence of your crimes," Penelope retorted. "Smart girl." The outlaw's smile was chilling. "That little black book he had, with all our contacts, our routes, you're going to tell us where it is?" Penelope's mind raced. Thomas had indeed left a small journal which she had found among his personal effects. She had given it to Adam weeks ago when he'd explained his investigation. "I don't have it," she said truthfully. "Then we'll have to be persuasive." The man reached for her arm. The crack of a rifle shot echoed through the cemetery. The outlaw howled, clutching his shoulder as he fell to his knees. "Step away from the lady," came a familiar voice, though rougher than she remembered it. Adam emerged from behind a large headstone, rifle aimed steadily. He looked terrible, face bruised, a bloodied bandage visible beneath his torn shirt. "Sutton," one of the mounted men exclaimed, "you're supposed to be dead. Disappointed?" Adam kept the rifle trained on them as he moved to Penelope's side. "Miss Fletcher, step back, please." The wounded outlaw on the ground lunged for his fallen pistol. Adam fired again, the bullet kicking up dirt inches from the man's hand. "Next one won't miss," Adam warned. "All of you throw down your weapons." For a tense moment, Penelope thought the other men might attack. Then grudgingly they tossed their guns to the ground. "You won't get far, Sutton," the wounded leader snarled. "We got friends all over these parts." "And I've got the territorial militia riding in from Fort Whipple," Adam countered. "Should be here by sundown." Using rope from one of the outlaws' saddles, Adam bound the three men together. Only when they were secured did he turn to Penelope, his eyes dark with concern. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice softening. "I'm fine," she assured him, then gestured to his wounded state. "But you're not." "What happened?" Adam grimaced. "Ambush up in the hills. They left me for dead in a ravine." His eyes hardened as he glanced at the captives. "Mistake on their part." Penelope helped Adam lead the prisoners and their horses into town, where the local sheriff took them into custody. By the time they finished giving statements, Adam was swaying on his feet from blood loss and exhaustion. "You need a doctor," Penelope insisted, supporting him as they left the sheriff's office. "Just need rest," he protested, but didn't resist when she guided him to her cottage instead of the hotel where he'd been staying. Penelope helped him to her brother's old bed, then gathered bandages and the herbal medicines her mother had taught her to prepare. As she cleaned his wounds, a deep gash along his ribs and various cuts and bruises, she fought back tears. "I thought you'd abandoned our morning walks," she admitted, her fingers gentle as she applied a poultice to his side. Adam's hand caught hers. "I'd never abandon you, Penelope. I just needed to find these men before they found you. How did you know they would come for me today?" "I didn't. I was coming back to warn you." His blue eyes held hers. "When I saw their horses headed toward the cemetery, I feared the worst." Penelope finished bandaging his wounds, acutely aware of his gaze following her every movement. "You should rest," she said finally, uncomfortable with the emotions welling up inside her. Adam caught her hand again as she turned to leave. "Thank you," he said simply. For 3 days, Penelope nursed Adam back to health in her home, raising eyebrows among the townspeople. The widow Mrs. Thornton from next door appointed herself unofficial chaperone, frequently stopping by with meals for the invalid while casting disapproving glances at Penelope. On the 4th morning, Adam insisted on accompanying Penelope to the cemetery despite his injuries. They walked more slowly than usual, his arm occasionally brushing hers for balance. At Thomas's grave, Penelope placed her customary flowers, then stepped back beside Adam. "I've been thinking," he said, breaking their usual respectful silence. "Your brother wouldn't want you spending every dawn in mourning." Penelope stiffened. "You don't know what Thomas would want." "I know he loved you enough to die protecting your future," Adam replied gently. "A future he'd want filled with more than just grief." "What else is there?" The words escaped before she could stop them, revealing more vulnerability than she'd intended. Adam's hand found hers, his calloused fingers wrapping around her smaller ones. "Life, Penelope, the life he saved." They stood together in silence, hands joined, until the rising sun cast long shadows across the graves. As June turned to July, Penelope continued her dawn visits, but they gradually shortened. Sometimes she and Adam would bring a small breakfast to share afterward, sitting beneath the old oak tree and talking as the day began around them. She learned he had grown up on a ranch in Texas, had fought briefly for the Confederacy despite opposing slavery, and had turned to law enforcement after witnessing the lawlessness that plagued the post-war territories. "What made you become a marshal?" she asked one morning as they shared fresh bread and jam. Adam was quiet for a moment. "My sister," he finally said. "She was killed by outlaws when I couldn't protect her. She was only 16. Penelope's heart ached for him. "Is that why you understand my need to come here each day?" He nodded. "Grief needs somewhere to go. For years, mine went into tracking down the men who killed her." His blue eyes met hers. "But vengeance isn't healing, Penelope. I learned that too late." In mid-July, a telegraph arrived summoning Adam to Prescott. The remaining Stillwell gang members were being transported for trial, and he was needed to testify. "I'll be gone at least a week," he told Penelope the evening before his departure. They sat on her porch swing, watching fireflies dance in the gathering twilight. "Will you be all right?" I managed before you arrived, Marshal Sutton, she reminded him, though the thought of his absence left an unexpected hollow feeling. I know you did, he smiled, the expression softening his weather-worn features, but I'll worry nonetheless. Impulsively, Penelope reached for his hand. I'll be careful, no dawn visits until you return. His fingers tightened around hers. I've been thinking about what happens after the trial. Penelope's heart stuttered. She'd been avoiding thoughts of Adam's inevitable departure once his assignment was complete. They'll likely send me on to New Mexico territory, he continued. There's trouble brewing with land grant disputes. Of course, Penelope said, withdrawing her hand and smoothing her skirts, you must follow your duty. Adam caught her chin gently, turning her face toward his. My duty isn't all that guides me, Penelope. In the fading light, his eyes were serious, searching hers. These past weeks, walking with you, talking with you, they've meant more to me than I expected. Before she could respond, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers, a brief, tender kiss that ended too soon. When he pulled back, Penelope found herself leaning toward him, wanting more. I should go, he said hoarsely. Early start tomorrow. Penelope watched him walk away, her fingers touching her lips where the warmth of his kiss lingered. The week of Adam's absence stretched interminably. True to her word, Penelope didn't visit the cemetery at dawn, though she found herself waking at that hour regardless, her body accustomed to the ritual. Instead, she threw herself into preparing for the new school term, cleaning the small schoolhouse and planning lessons. On the third day, a heavy summer thunderstorm rolled in from the mountains. As lightning split the sky and rain lashed against her windows, Penelope thought of Adam traveling in such weather and found herself offering a silent prayer for his safety. It was a revelation, realizing how deeply she had come to care for this quiet, steadfast man who had walked beside her through her grief without trying to diminish it. He had offered not platitudes, but presence, not judgment, but understanding. By the sixth day, Penelope admitted to herself that she was in love with Adam Sutton. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. What future could there be with a man whose duty called him to dangerous assignments across the territories? On the eighth day, with still no word from Adam, Penelope broke her promise. She left for the cemetery at dawn, needing the solace of her familiar ritual. As she approached Thomas's grave, words poured from her heart. I think I'm in love, Thomas, she whispered, arranging fresh wildflowers against the headstone. He's a good man, stubborn and too noble for his own good like you were. She smiled through gathering tears. You would have approved, I think. I'd like to believe so, came Adam's voice from behind her. Penelope whirled to find him standing there, looking trail-worn but whole. Relief flooded through her, followed quickly by embarrassment. How long have you been there? She demanded. Long enough. He closed the distance between them in 3 strides. I got back late last night. Came straight here at dawn, hoping you'd break your promise. Before she could protest, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her properly, deeply, thoroughly, with none of the hesitation of their first kiss. Penelope found herself responding with equal fervor, her hands clutching the front of his coat. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Adam rested his forehead against hers. I've been doing some thinking about my future, he said. About our future if you'll have me. Penelope's heart soared, then just as quickly plummeted. Your duty, I've requested a permanent assignment to the Arizona Territory, he interrupted. Based in Prescott, but responsible for this whole county, I'd still be gone sometimes, but I'd always come back. His eyes searched hers. To you, if you'll wait for me. Tears spilled down Penelope's cheeks. Are you proposing, Marshal Sutton? Inelegantly, but yes. He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. Penelope Fletcher, I love you. I want to walk with you not just to this graveyard, but through the rest of our lives together. Will you marry me? Through her tears, Penelope nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. As the sun broke fully over the horizon, casting golden light across the cemetery, Adam rose and sealed their engagement with another kiss. When they finally parted, Penelope turned to her brother's grave one last time. Thank you, Thomas, she said softly, for bringing him to me. Hand in hand, they walked out of the cemetery toward their future. Over the next month, preparations for their wedding consumed the small town. Despite Mrs. Thornton's insistence that a lengthy engagement was more proper, Penelope and Adam set a date for late August, before the new school term began. "Life is too uncertain to wait," Adam said simply when questioned about their haste. Those who knew of his dangerous profession nodded in understanding. On a warm Saturday morning, 2 days before their wedding, Adam arrived at Penelope's cottage with a small wrapped package. "A gift," he explained, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Something I've been working on." Inside was a beautifully crafted wooden box, its lid inlaid with a pattern of stars. When Penelope opened it, she found a small leather-bound journal and a delicate silver key. "The journal is for your thoughts," Adam explained. "The memories you want to preserve, the good and the bad." "And the key?" Penelope asked, examining the intricate design. Adam guided her hands to a hidden compartment beneath the journal. "For the things too painful to revisit often, but too important to forget." Penelope's eyes filled with tears. It was a perfect gift, acknowledging her need to honor her grief while encouraging her to look forward. "I thought," Adam continued hesitantly, "that perhaps we might visit Thomas together on our wedding day before the ceremony, to include him in a way." Overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of this man who understood her so completely, Penelope could only nod and pull him close. Their wedding day dawned clear and bright. As planned, they met at the cemetery in the early morning hours, Penelope in her wedding gown of pale blue silk, Adam in a new black suit. Together, they placed a wreath of white roses on Thomas's grave. "He's still with us," Adam said quietly, his arm around Penelope's waist. "In the love he taught you to give, in the courage he showed that inspired me. In a way, he brought us together." Penelope leaned against him, finally at peace with her loss. "And now we go forward, carrying him with us." The wedding itself was a joyous affair, attended by nearly everyone in Cottonwood Springs. Sheriff Davis stood as Adam's best man, while Mrs. Thornton, won over by Adam's steady character, proudly accompanied Penelope in place of a mother. As they exchanged vows in the small whitewashed church, Penelope looked into Adam's clear blue eyes and saw her future, a future she had once thought impossible in the depths of her grief. That evening, as they began their new life together in the cottage that was now their home, Adam pulled Penelope close. "No visit to the cemetery tomorrow?" he asked softly. Penelope smiled up at him. "Perhaps not at dawn," she agreed, "but we'll go sometimes, together." "Together," Adam echoed, sealing the promise with a kiss. As summer turned to autumn, Penelope and Adam settled into married life. She continued teaching at the small schoolhouse while he established his office in town when not riding circuit through his assigned territory. Their dawn ritual gradually transformed. Sometimes they still visited Thomas's grave together, but more often they spent those quiet morning hours in each other's arms, watching the sunrise from their bedroom window. In October, Adam was called away to investigate cattle rustling near the Mexican border. What should have been a routine assignment stretched into 2 tense weeks. When he finally returned, he found Penelope waiting on their porch, a letter clutched in her hand. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, dismounting and rushing to her side. Penelope handed him the letter. "It's from Prescott. They're reopening the investigation into the Stillwell gang. New evidence has emerged about their gun-running operation." Adam scanned the official document. "They want me to testify again. There's more." Penelope's voice trembled. "The man you captured at the cemetery, Jed Stillwell, he escaped during transfer to Yuma prison." Adam's expression hardened. "When?" 3 days ago." Penelope gripped his hands. "The marshal in Prescott thinks he might come here, for revenge." That night, as they lay in bed discussing their options, Adam held Penelope close. "We could leave," he suggested. "Request a transfer to another territory until this is settled." Penelope shook her head against his chest. "This is our home. I won't be driven away by fear." "Then we'll face it together," Adam said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I'll speak with Sheriff Davis tomorrow about increasing patrols." For the next week, Adam rarely left Penelope's side. He accompanied her to and from the schoolhouse and arranged for a deputy to watch their home when his duties required him elsewhere. The tension wore on them both, but each night they found solace in each other's arms, their love deepening through the shared adversity. As days passed with no sign of trouble, they began to hope that perhaps Stillwell had fled to Mexico instead of seeking vengeance. Until the morning, Penelope found a crude drawing pinned to the schoolhouse door a sketch of a cemetery with two crosses, one bearing her name, one Adams. Sheriff Davis organized a search party but found no trace of the fugitive in or around Cottonwood Springs. That evening, as Adam cleaned his guns at the kitchen table, Penelope made a decision. "We need to end this," she said firmly. "I won't live in fear and I won't have the children endangered." Adam looked up. "What are you suggesting?" "Stillwell wants revenge. Let's give him the opportunity." Her eyes held steady determination. "Tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of Thomas's death. We'll go to the cemetery at dawn, as we always did." "Absolutely not," Adam protested. "I won't use you as bait." "Not bait," Penelope corrected. "A trap. Sheriff Davis and his men can hide among the graves. When Stillwell comes for us, they'll be waiting." Adam stared at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "Your brother would be proud of your courage," he said quietly. "But we do this my way. You'll wear my spare gun belt under your shawl." The plan was set in motion. Before first light, Sheriff Davis and 4 deputies concealed themselves throughout the cemetery. Adam and Penelope arrived as dawn broke, walking slowly to Thomas's grave as they had done so many times before. As Penelope knelt to arrange fresh flowers, Adam stood protectively nearby, his hand near his holster. The cemetery was eerily silent, even the morning birds seemingly aware of the tension in the air. "He's not coming," Penelope whispered after 15 minutes had passed. "He'll come," Adam assured her. Men like Stillwell can't resist the chance to gloat. 5 minutes later, the sound of approaching hoofbeats confirmed Adam's prediction. Jed Stillwell rode through the cemetery gates alone, rifle in hand. "Touching scene," he called out, his voice carrying in the still morning air. The marshal and his schoolteacher wife paying respects to her dead brother. Adam positioned himself slightly in front of Penelope. "It's over, Stillwell. Sheriff Davis has men all around us. Surrender now." Stillwell's laugh was cold. "You think I didn't scout this place first? I've been watching for days. Saw the sheriff and his men arrive an hour ago." He raised his rifle. "They're a bit tied up at the moment. My friends made sure of that." Adam's hand moved to his gun. "Then it's just us." "Drop the pistol, Marshal," Stillwell ordered. "Or I put a bullet through your pretty wife's head." Adam hesitated, then slowly removed his gun and placed it on the ground. Stillwell dismounted, keeping his rifle trained on them. "Your brother took everything from me," he said to Penelope. "My business, my freedom. Now I'm going to take everything from you, starting with your husband." "My brother was upholding the law," Penelope replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You were selling guns to renegades who murdered innocent families. Business is business," Stillwell sneered. "And this is the cost of interfering with mine." He aimed the rifle at Adam's chest. In that moment, Penelope reached beneath her shawl and drew the pistol Adam had insisted she carry. Before Stillwell could react, she fired, the bullet striking his shoulder. Howling in pain, Stillwell dropped his rifle and clutched at the wound. Adam lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. They struggled briefly before Adam gained the upper hand, pinning Stillwell face down in the dirt. The sound of running footsteps announced the arrival of Sheriff Davis and his deputies, disheveled but unharmed. They had managed to overpower Stillwell's associates, 2 local troublemakers hired to distract them. As the sheriff handcuffed the cursing outlaw, Adam returned to Penelope's side. She still stood by Thomas's grave, the pistol now hanging limply at her side. "Are you all right?" Adam asked gently, taking the gun from her trembling hand. Penelope nodded slowly. "I didn't want to kill him," she whispered. "Even after everything he's done." Adam pulled her into his arms. "That's what makes you different from him," he murmured against her hair. "Your compassion, your belief in justice over vengeance." As Stillwell was led away, Penelope turned back to her brother's grave. "It's over now, Thomas," she said softly. "Truly over." Hand in hand, they walked out of the cemetery into the brightening day, both aware that a chapter in their lives had finally closed. The winter of 1879 brought heavy snows to the Arizona Territory. Adam's duties kept him closer to home, for which Penelope was grateful. Their evenings were spent before the fireplace, planning for the future, perhaps expanding their small home in the spring, discussing the possibility of starting a family. In February, as they celebrated Adam's birthday with a small dinner party, Sheriff Davis brought news that Jed Stillwell had been sentenced to 20 years in Yuma prison. The Stillwell gang was officially disbanded, its members either dead or imprisoned. "A fine birthday present," Adam remarked later as they prepared for bed. Knowing that chapter is closed for good, Penelope wrapped her arms around him from behind, pressing her cheek against his broad back. "I have another present for you," she said softly. Adam turned in her embrace. "Oh." Taking his hand, Penelope placed it gently against her stomach. "Come summer, we'll be a family of 3. The joy that transformed Adam's face was everything Penelope had hoped for. He gathered her in his arms, lifting her off her feet in his excitement. "A baby," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. "Our baby." That night, as Adam slept peacefully beside her, Penelope wrote in the journal he had given her, recording this new chapter in their lives. When she finished, she carefully placed a pressed flower from Thomas's grave in the hidden compartment beneath, not as a symbol of grief anymore, but as a reminder of the journey that had brought her to this moment of perfect happiness. As her pregnancy progressed, Penelope continued teaching until the school board insisted she take leave for the final months. Adam became endearingly protective, escorting her everywhere and constantly checking that she was comfortable. "I'm with child, not made of glass," she would tease when his hovering became too much. Their visits to the cemetery became less frequent but more peaceful. Sometimes they would sit beneath the oak tree, discussing names for their child, including Thomas if it was a boy. In late July, as a particularly fierce summer storm raged outside, Penelope went into labor. The town doctor was called, but the swollen creek delayed his arrival. It was Mrs. Thornton, experienced from delivering countless babies in her younger years, who helped bring Thomas Adam Sutton into the world just as dawn broke on July 30, 1879. When Adam first held his son, tears streamed unashamedly down his weathered face. "He's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the infant's tiny fingers. "He has your eyes," Penelope observed, exhausted but radiant. "And your courage," Adam replied, placing the baby back in her arms. As summer turned to autumn and their son grew stronger each day, Penelope and Adam established new routines and rituals. Sunday visits to the cemetery became a family affair, with little Thomas cooing in his mother's arms as they tended to his namesake's grave. On the anniversary of their first meeting, the day Adam had first watched over Penelope from beneath the oak tree, they brought a picnic to share beneath its spreading branches. As Thomas napped in a makeshift cradle fashioned from Adam's jacket, they reflected on the journey that had brought them together. "I never expected to find love in a graveyard," Penelope admitted, leaning against her husband's shoulder. Adam chuckled, his arm tightening around her. "I never expected to find it watching over a stubborn woman who insisted on visiting that graveyard at dawn every day." Penelope smiled, thinking of how far they had come from those grief-filled morning walks. "Do you think we would have met otherwise, if Thomas hadn't died?" "I believe some souls are meant to find each other," Adam said thoughtfully. "We might have taken a different path, but I think we would have found our way to each other eventually." As they gathered their things to head home, Penelope paused by Thomas's grave one last time. "Thank you," she whispered, not just for the brother who had loved her enough to die protecting her, but for the journey that had led her through grief to love. Adam stood waiting by the cemetery gate, their son cradled securely in his strong arms. As Penelope joined them, he bent to kiss her gently. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Penelope smiled up at the two loves of her life. "I'm already there," she replied, taking his arm as they walked together into the golden afternoon light. In the years that followed, the Suttons' family grew with the addition of a daughter, Eleanor, born in the spring of 1881. Adam continued his work as a marshal, though he arranged his duties to spend more time near home as the children grew. Penelope eventually returned to teaching, becoming the headmistress of Cottonwood Springs' expanding school. Their dawn visits to the cemetery became special occasions rather than daily rituals. Birthdays, anniversaries, and quiet moments when remembrance called. The grief that had once consumed Penelope had transformed into a gentle reverence for her brother's memory, now shared with children who knew their Uncle Thomas through stories and the carved wooden horses Adam made in his likeness. On Thomas's 10th birthday, as Penelope watched her son place wildflowers on his uncle's grave, she felt Adam's hand slip into hers. He would have been proud, Adam said softly, nodding toward their children. Yes, Penelope agreed, of all of us. As they walked home together, the rising sun gilding their path, Penelope reflected on how a journey that began in unbearable grief had led to a life filled with immeasurable joy. The cowboy who had walked with her through her darkest hours now walked beside her through their shared life, a life richer and more beautiful than she could have imagined on those first lonely mornings in the graveyard. Her grief had taken her to the graveyard each dawn, and the cowboy had walked with her every time, but it was love that had led them home.